semester. Are there any announcements?
So I think we sent an email like 2 weeks about getting new students for the GSO. So the current GSO term has come to an end. So we need new students for the spring and the fall semester of 2019. We have a couple of students who were nominated, but only one accepted nomination for the treasurer and one accepted nomination for the vice president. And so far we have no people for the president position. So if we want to be democratic, we would like to have more nominations and more students who would like to volunteer the time. And if not, at least one person who would like to be the president. This is a really good opportunity for you to develop more into your professional skills, interact with faculty. It's like a really good learning opportunity. So please, if you would like to be the president for the GSO or be interested in the nominations for the other candidacies or other positions, please reach out to us because we need more students. So that's the announcement that I have.
Anything else? Okay, our speaker today is Dr. Felicitas Avendaño. Felicitas is a native of Argentina and got her undergraduate education there, and she'll explain other places where she's been as far as education goes. But she is a professor at Grandview University, which is in Des Moines.
Yep. 35 miles from here.
Yeah, and so she does the community, and she'll be talking about some of her teaching experiences there, and I'll just get the lights. It's all yours.
Sure.
You've got a remote version.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad to see we have the flag of Argentina in this room. So that's do you do that for every speaker, or is it just me?
It's electronic display.
Cool. Yeah. So, Mark invited me to talk to you a little bit about the alternative career. Probably many of you grad students are going through the same experience I went through. You go to undergrad, then you go to grad school, maybe a master's, maybe a PhD, and you see the people that surround you are all in these big universities. And they do research, they write grants, they may get them or not, hopefully they do, and you write papers, and the wheel continues, and you see that as that's the academic path. But turns out there are other possibilities, and this is one of those that I want to share with you. So a little bit of my background, how I got to where I am today. So I did my undergrad in Argentina. My title is Licenciada en Biología, which translates to something like having done a bachelor's degree and a master's all in one thing that lasts like 7.5 years. And at the end of it, you write a thesis on a project you did. So it's equivalent to all that together. And I worked in zoology. I love animals. It was animal biology all throughout. And my thesis was in parasites of fish. So parasitology became my thing. I really was fascinated with parasites at the time. Then briefly started a PhD in Buenos Aires, but by the time I got rolling on that, my husband got a position at Michigan State as a postdoc, so we came up north. And it got colder. I started to look who was working with parasites at Michigan State. And I found a couple people that didn't have money at the time, so they were not taking grad students or hiring anybody at the time, until I found somebody working with parasites of plants. And that was, okay, parasites of fish, parasites of plants, that's still parasites, so why not? So first I worked as a lab tech in Dr. Malak Abraham's lab at Michigan State. And then that turned into my PhD project and finished my PhD there. So by then I was an expert in the spatial distribution of the soybean cyst nematode, collecting gazillions soil samples, processing all that, counting cysts and eggs and whatnot. Then, again, my husband driving the wagon here, he's back there, he got a faculty position here, so we moved to Iowa. And once again, I was, okay, who's doing what? And I already knew Greg Tilka, so I knocked on his door and said, okay, can I continue working with soybean cyst nematode? And that's how it went. So I did a postdoc working with Greg and then Matt O'Neill. We added aphids to the mix. And it got to a point that I started to realize this research thing is not my thing. This grant writing and then paper writing and whatnot, it's really not what I'm enjoying. Now, another thing that I need to add to all this is just one aspect of my career thus far. Another side of it is, since I was an undergrad, I was teaching as a teaching assistant in Argentina in our school. After you take a course, if you get a good grade on it, you can apply to be an assistant, kind of like a peer leader sort of thing, and you get paid, and you help out. There you answer questions to the students, you help prepare the labs. So starting in my pretty much sophomore year on, I always found a way to be assisting in labs and classes. Then when I was briefly in the Universidad de Buenos Aires, starting that sort of PhD that didn't lead to much, I also found a way to teach, and I was teaching a parasitology lab. And then at Michigan State, when they told me, well, you know, if you want to do your PhD, you'll have to TA. And I was like, yes, I'll go to TA. And TA throughout my entire PhD. And when I came here to Iowa State, part of the spousal accommodation, what would you like to do? I said, well, I would like to teach some. And they gave me the general bio, I can remember the number now, the general biology course you guys have here. And then there was a lecture biology class for non-science majors, 180 students, in one of those huge lecture halls. And they said, would you like to take that? Nobody else wants it, but hey, do you want it? And I said, yes, I took it, and I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I taught it a couple of years. And so then I was getting to that point that research is something I'm doing so I can teach. And it didn't make any sense following the traditional path where people do research and they teach when they have to. So what's conflicting with that? And that took me to Grandview. But you know, one of those days when you are thinking about what you're going to do with your life and you start searching for jobs and see what is out there. And Grandview was looking for a biology professor. And I applied and I got the job. And that's where I've been this is the end of my 11th fall semester. It's great there for me. It's 100% teaching appointment. All I do, well, that's not true, but most of what I do is teach and develop courses and do things. To give you an idea, Grandview has about 2,000 students. Some years fluctuates a little bit. Half of those are commuters, so not everybody lives on campus. A lot of people that live in Des Moines and just go there. We have a good number of adult students or non-traditional students. We have programs that run only on weekends, so people that have full-time jobs can complete a degree following that format. We have a fair amount of non-traditional students in the sense of age, so they're older than the recent high school graduate, about 1/4 of them. The ratio is a little bit skewed to the females. We have a big nursing department, and that draws a lot of females to our campus. And most of them are Iowan and majority-wise, but we have representation of other groups, as you can see there. We have students from different states, including Guam and Puerto Rico. So it's cool to have the one Guam student. And some international students, particularly Scotland and England, seem to come on over to play soccer. As we have one here, one of them. Okay, coming over. We have, since 3 years ago, 4 master's programs. This is Master's in Education, Master's in Leadership in Nursing or something like that, sport management, and some other business thing. And otherwise we have 40 academic majors, but then when you break it down, the vast majority are either business or nursing, and then we have psych, sport management, biology, and a few others make up the students in there. Okay, this is to give you an idea of what Grandview is like, so then when I tell you what my job is like, it'll make more sense. This is our campus. It's 1, 2, 3-ish blocks. small by one. So it's small, we're close, everything is right there. The dorms are in here, in suites and apartments. The science building is over there. There's still students that drive to get to class. To give you an idea, this is East 14 in Des Moines. East 14 is Highway 69. So if you take Duff and keep driving, you're going to get to Grandview. And when I started 10 years ago, none of this existed. All that was built since then. And so it has grown quite a bit. Okay? We share a soccer field with East High, Des Moines East High, that is farther down the road. And we have a huge wrestling facility a little bit up the road. 10 years ago, also, when I started in 2008, Grandview started a football team and a wrestling team. And those have been doing great and kind of put Grandview on the map for many people. Like I was talking with Greg, how he hears about Grandview through the sports news. Because it used to be a really, really small niche college, and now it has expanded quite a bit. Okay? So, small community. We know each other fairly well. Every student has a story, and there's somebody at Grandview who knows all about it. And that allows us to provide a lot of support to our students. So, what is it like to work at a place like Grandview? Okay? There's a liberal arts college. Lutheran is the tradition of the school, even though if you look at the breakdown by religion of the students, the majority are Catholic, and Lutheran comes second, and then whatever you can think of. So it's not a requirement to attend or work at Grandview. But the responsibilities are broken down kind of like what these circles represent. And maybe teaching should have been a little bit bigger, because that's the main thing we do. We are required and we are evaluated on teaching, scholarship, and service. And I'm in the promotions and tenure committee, so I review people's portfolios all the time, and usually teaching is the key piece. The other can be and you still get your promotion and your tenure. But if your teaching is weak, you're not going anywhere. Even if you're writing the greatest papers in the universe, it's not going to take you too far. So, what is teaching like here when it's so important? Well, the requirement is 24 credit hours in a year, split 12 and 12 or however that might be. To give an idea, a lecture class that meets 3 times a week, that's 3 credit hours, 3 hours. This is my load this semester, spring and coming summer. Right now I'm 3 credits overload, so I'm teaching 4 different courses. Histology 7 credits because it's lecture and lab all together. Then in the spring I teach general biology 2. That's my favorite course to teach, where I get to do animals. And I teach 2 lectures, 3 labs, and I also do the senior seminar, so that puts me 5 credits over time. And this is entirely my choice to teach in the summer. I'm not required to, so that's additionally. Okay? I also put this up here so you can see the variety of things that you end up teaching. You teach what is needed. Each one of us has an area of expertise, and then whatever needs to be taught. So my area, remember, zoology and parasitology. I'm teaching histology, medical terminology, nutrition in a senior seminar. Not very many animals in there. In general biology 2, it's all evolution and biodiversity. So that's where I shine. And then medical terminology again. And I've also taught, what have I taught? Comparative anatomy of vertebrates when there are enough students. And I don't think what else have I done. I'm sure journal club and something else. Each one of us has an area. Like there's the genetics person. She teaches genetics and molecular biology, and she knows that. There's the microbiology, and he teaches micro and immunology. There's the plant person, plant biology, environmental biology, plant phys, field ecology, anything with plants, it's her. So Here you have colleges and departments. There we have a department with people, with individuals. So it's a little bit different, okay? So that is a lot of time teaching, preparing, grading, reading about teaching, talking about teaching, preparing the labs, teaching the labs, cleaning up the labs. There's great, no, I shouldn't say there's great pressure. There's great motivation to stay up to date on what's the latest in teaching methods, what works. Being innovative in trying new things and see if it works, assessing that and improving on that. We're all about active learning classes rather than just lectures, always looking for a way, how can you engage everybody? And that guy back there is not really paying attention. What can I do differently? He looked up. What can I do differently to engage that student? Okay, and I go home and I think, okay, such and such is always late. What's going on? And always thinking, how can I get to the students because I want them to learn, not just blurt out in the class. So student learning is always at the top of our minds. And how do we know if they're learning? So also thinking, how do we assess learning? Is an exam a good way to know if they're learning? Are quizzes or papers enough? Do we need to do something else or different? Okay. Other duties related to teaching, creating, your Blackboard site and maintaining it for main communication with the students. Assessing the course as a whole. Is the course doing what I'm hoping it does? My course is part of the biology majors program, and we have a BA biology and we have a BS biology pre-med, pre-dental pathway. So this one's a little bit more demanding than this one. Is my histology course really meeting the needs of those students wanting to go to medical school or not? How do I know that? So assessment all the time. At the course level, at the department level, at the program level, and so on. A lot of self-reflection. Some people do this daily. That's a bit too much for me. At the end of the semester, I sit down and take note, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what can I do different? And it's an ongoing process, never satisfied with how things went. Okay. So all that is involved in teaching. So then when I submit my portfolio for evaluation, say for promotion or for tenure, I need to write a narrative addressing all these things. What have I done? Where did I mess up? What did I do about it? How do I know I messed up? Where were my successes? How do I know they worked? And that's basically how teaching is evaluated in part.
Felicitas?
Yes.
Before you move on, 2 slides ago, I should have asked, do you have help with the labs and so forth, getting specimens ready or working with the students to make sure they're seeing the right things under the microscope and stuff like that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So we have a lab person, Jennifer, that if I need anything, I ask her and she takes care of ordering it.
She's a staff person?
She's staff, and she covers all the labs in there except microbiology. Micro has their own person who prepares all the media, and that's a little bit more time consuming. So if I need, anything rats, we dissect rats in Bio 102. I tell her ahead of time and she makes sure I have the rats. But that's as far as that goes. The day of the lab or the day before the lab, I need to go gather all my things, set up the lab, teach it, answer all the questions, and then come back. The size of the class is something I forgot to include, is my labs are never bigger than 18 students, more likely 16 in that lower level. As I go up, there are 7, 8 students. But no, I don't have TAs of any sorts. Any other questions so far? Yes?
What do the teachers look like at Grandview with PhDs versus masters?
So the requirement for an adjunct position that you are hired to teach a course is a master's degree. So if you have a master's on something, then you qualify to apply for it. For the tenure track positions, you need a terminal degree in your discipline, which is likely a PhD. And we also have a category which is continuing contract, which is people that there is a higher degree in their discipline, they don't have it, but we were unable to find somebody with a higher degree. An example of that is in communications, we have a journalist, and apparently there's a PhD in journalism, but he doesn't have that PhD. But he's great, and we needed him. So he has a continuing contract. So he's not going to get tenure, but every 2 years he submits a portfolio, gets evaluated, contract renewed. Others who are ABD about to finish their degree, haven't defended their dissertation yet, may be hired in continuing contract, and as soon as they finish their degree, then they get promoted to, or moved on to the tenure track. Anything else? So service was another one of those bubbles. Service, we break it down into 3 categories. Service to students, again, is the most important. Service to the university, and service to the profession and the community. And that plays quite an important role. So students, advising, and I'll expand on that in a little bit. Being involved in students' activities, either being the advisor of the club or an organization, or even just attending their games or fundraisers or whatever they do. That is important to maintain that good connection with the students. And whatever way you can interact with the students, it's encouraged. To the university, the department's staff, like everywhere else. We have shared governance, so there are gazillions of committees, and there's a Senate, and there's an assembly meeting, and there's meetings all the time. And then to the community and profession, that plays quite an important role, because we can get too isolated in that little campus. I have nobody else to talk to about zoology or parasites. So by being a member of organizations and going out and having an active role in collaborating or just communicating with people outside review, it's quite critical to stay, up to date and informed on what's going on and build connections. Okay. So that's to force us out of that small campus. A little bit more in advising, just like teaching, so some cringing about the teaching load. We get official advisees assigned, which can vary from 10 to 25 to sometimes more, depending on the major. Of those, your job is to make sure they're registered in time for the courses they need in the next semester, but also you're their mentor. You're the person they go to when they trying to figure out what they're going to do with their life. If they're thinking changing their major, if you're thinking what next after school, and so on. So that, we call it vocation discernment. We play quite an important role there. We help them create a completion plan. Grandview has this financial option that when they start as a freshman, they create a 4-year plan, and if they finish it at that time, Grandview, there's like a contract that they plan ahead how much they're going to pay each semester. So as long as they stick to their plan, Grandview sticks to its own plan. So there are no surprises on the bills. So it's part of our role to help them stay on track on that plan. And usually this requires quite a lot of, the required 1 meeting per semester, but also the someone just dropping in your office one day and just coming to tell you something, and they need to discuss something. And you put everything aside and you pay attention to that student right there that needs your attention. And that can be 20 minutes, can be an hour. Or it can mean taking that student and walking them to the counselor's office because it's something major like you need to address. Or maybe talking with a student and making a connection to the tutors or whatever the resources we have, assisting that student at the time. So we're kind of the go-to person for your advisees. And then there are unofficial. There are others that just adopt you as their mentor. And they have their official advisor and they just come to you. And then we have the lifelong mentees, some that I'm not looking at, that you continue, you develop these relationships and they continue up to graduation. I'm looking at Stacy, she was my advisee at Review, and you know, we still mentor each other now, it's mutual. But like her, there are many others, you know, that maintain those connections. We also have a system we call early alerts that it's borderline too much, but during the first 3 weeks of school, if there's a student who has missed a significant amount of classes, or it's always late, or falls asleep, or looks weird today, or whatever, we just go online to our system and send an alert. So then the advisor receives the alert, and the counselor receives the alert, and a couple other people in the success team receive the alert. And that sets in motion a whole bunch of pieces trying to figure out how can we support the student, let's find out what's going on, and do what we can to bring the student up. Sometimes there's someone who's just partying too much, so that would require a conversation. Hey, you're here to study. Other times it's something more serious, and sometimes they're important things. So as an advisor, you're responding to those alerts, calling the student and finding out, contacting others, or you're reporting students. Okay, all towards success and retention. And all this requires constant training. So there are workshops and there are things going on to keep us informed and develop strategies, what's the best way to do these approaches. Yep.
So when you talk about the completion plan, it made me think about money and tuition. So in general terms, is Grandview a much more expensive option compared to a land-grant university? Or, you know, the word on the street is private institutions offer more scholarships that bring the cost down closer to in line with the land grants. What would you say if somebody just generally asked you about the cost to go to Grandview?
That's exactly it. So the ticket price is much higher than coming to Iowa State, but we also accept those either athletics or other scholarships and Pell Grants and other options available to private schools that bring it down significantly. So I would say there are very few students that are paying the full price for it, full cost. Don't ask me numbers because I didn't check them before coming, but that everything you said is exactly it. Yeah, I don't need to expand on this. You all know what departments and things do. It's meetings, lots of meetings, people talking a lot, and you can accomplish a lot. But it cuts on your time. I mean, the schedule was already pretty full with all the teaching stuff. And then there are FICs, and then there are the meetings, and whatever comes out that needs to be done from that. And we have students that come and visit the campus, and they want to talk to a professor. So we set out half an hour and we sit with this prospective student, tell them about our plan, our program, try to recruit them, show them the building, the labs, and try to put them, you know, in that situation. You're going to be a student here, this is what it will be like. Also cuts up on time. Speaking of time, I have no idea how am I doing on time. So I'll keep talking until you get scholarship. No, it left until the end. Scholarship is very vaguely defined for a reason. So the definition we have is that effective scholars demonstrate competence in increasing knowledge and finding ways to increase its application through other careers. And I'm like, what is that? What do I need to do? And it varies a lot. If you are in nursing, if you're in art, if you're in visual communications, if you're in history, if you're in biology. So we use the Boyer's model that has categories. So if you are creating art, you're doing scholarship. If you are writing papers or articles for a publication, or maybe a chapter in a book. Maybe that's application. If a nurse is spending the weekends at a clinic taking, vitals on patients, she's doing scholarship of practice. Discovery will be the more traditional research, the type of research you guys do, which very few have the opportunity and the ability to do because time, and we don't have grants or resources to have a fully functioning lab when you can maybe dedicate a couple hours a week to it. So that's very difficult to do, at least at Grad. Integration is if you're writing, review papers or a book on something. And pedagogy is probably the one that we can do more easily, the scholarship of teaching and learning. Doing research and writing about how students learn, how we can teach differently, and collecting data on that, because that's what we're doing all the time. So that's probably the one we apply the most. These posters are made by my students in that General Biology 2 class. I don't have time to do research. I said, okay, maybe my students can do it for me. So in the class last year, we talked about plastic and the impact of plastics in the environment. And they had to go out and collect data and present a poster. And it was, very, very simple and very limited. But it gave them an exposure of what research is like. And gave me the opportunity to perhaps, when I find the time, write a scholarship of teaching and learning paper on what the experience was on having students do this research. So you find a way to combine things so you can meet the scholarship requirement. This is the part that varies a lot in different schools. At Grandview, it's very little. If you go to Simpson or Grinnell, other small schools, scholarship research has a more important role. So you have slightly smaller teaching, lower teaching load, and a little bit more time to research in involving students, and that research is encouraged. Still, the support is limited. Okay. I included 1 week for my calendar so I get an idea of what my typical day is like, which there isn't such a thing as a typical day. And I'll say start Monday, had a meeting with a student, and then I had a class. Then I have office hours, so here I need to stay in my office, so that's grading and preparing the next class. Then there's a lab. Then I had to pick up bagels, because that day I was giving my histology students bagels, and we had a discussion. So histology and nutrition, and a little bit of a break, and then a department event, and then a meeting later on. And it's pretty full. There are little gaps that just vanish, responding emails, and the random student that drops in your office, and grading and revising your lectures or creating new ones. Sometimes nutrition is a brand new course for me, something I had to learn to teach it, so it takes quite a bit of time. And then this is a conference call that with a group that I'm working with Iowa State and Kirkwood College and Iowa Central Community College, and we're trying to organize Vision and Change event here that will happen in May. So we found a time to meet, through a Zoom meeting, and you try to fit it in and maintain those connections outside Grandview. Okay. So wrapping this up a little bit, the benefits, they're plentiful. I really like working where I work, for the most part. The strong focus on teaching and the support to develop teaching and anything you want to do related to teaching is there. So if you have a passion for teaching, this is a place for you, okay, or this type of environment. Student success is the driving force for everything. So you're not teaching to deliver content to a group of faces, but you're teaching for students to learn something out of it. And that's very motivating sometimes. Frustrating when they don't, but that's a different story. It tends to be collaborative. You talk with people from other departments a lot, and sometimes great ideas come from that collaboration. What else? You have quite a degree of autonomy in what you want to do in your class and how you want to do it. So you have quite a bit of freedom in that sense. And you get the summer off. Up to you what you want to do those 4 months. So we start in last week of August, and by the last week of April, we're done. We're off the hook. I'll be teaching an online course, but that's only all the way through May and June, and then it's out. Okay. And I say mostly of work because at least I always find something to do, like come up with a new course that I want to teach. So I spend the summer working on that. Or we had to write program reviews, so in the summer we did most of the work. But it's completely different pace of work. The challenges, working with non-traditional students sometimes is complicated, adds another layer to the mix because they have full-time jobs, they have families, they have demands that the 18 to 22 years old don't have. So it's a little bit more difficult to navigate. We have quite a few, a lot of first-generation students. So the younger ones are most of them first-generation. Then that means they don't know the basics of going to college. So particularly the first semester for freshmen, they have a freshman seminar is 3 credits that they work with their advisor one-on-one and learning how to navigate this thing that it's college. There's never enough time. The small departments, it's great. We get to know each other really well, so sometimes that's not that great. So that's a double-edged thing. So it can work great or not so well. And the risk of professional isolation, what I said earlier, if you don't actively seek these connections outside, you end up in a little bubble in your little world, and you are teaching mostly introductory level courses, so you never get to the advanced course on. So you may not be reading the latest on whatever your discipline is, like you are when you're doing a postdoc or a PhD. Okay. Oh, and the complicated life stories. Maybe that should be my scholarship, write up those stories. And some really get serious and require intervention. And then you take them home with you. And then you're worried about it and you don't know what it is. And it's this other person that really all it's doing is taking a class with you. But now their story has become part of yours. So it's not better or worse than this path with Duke University. It's just different, very different. The stresses are there, they're just different. So you're not sweating on a grant where you're going to get it or not, because you don't write grants. But there are many other reasons to be worried and or concerned about. To get there, how do you take this path? First is teaching. You have to, if you think this might be for you, if you haven't yet, find ways to put yourself in a classroom. TAing or those courses that nobody wants to teach. The non-majors are good because you cannot really harm them that much. You can try things and get experience for them. So through grad school, postdoc, find opportunities to be in the classroom and gain some experience. If there are workshops, here you have go to those workshops, read books about teaching, learn what is the latest in it. If that makes you tick, then maybe this is something you want to consider. Okay. Consider attending once in a while, if you can, a conference that's not specific to your discipline, but it's more about teaching that discipline. For example, I go every other year because we have some money to go to conferences, but it's not enough, so I have to let it build 2 years so then I can go to a conference. NABT is the National Association of Biology Teachers, and they're awesome. They give you a water bottle. And it's great. It's huge, and biology educators from all over the country will gather there. and you come back totally energized and you learn what works, what doesn't about teaching biology. Or SABRE, which is research in biology education. Or ACUBE, another Association of College and Universities biology educators as well. So all these are biology, different aspects of biology, and how to teach it well. And that will give you a sense of what is this other world that maybe just going to the conference on nematodes will not get you. Right? There may be somebody talking about teaching, but it's the one person in the mass of scientists. Another option, and there are several grad students from Iowa State that take this opportunity, is apply as an adjunct. We hire adjuncts. There are currently grad students here. DMAC hires adjuncts. There are currently grad students, and that gives you, an opportunity to get that experience and really see from inside how these schools work. Right now in the nutrition course, I teach one section, and then the other sections, there are 2 grad students from the nutrition program here that come and teach. And I mentor them in the teaching part. They mentor me in the nutrition part, so it's a symbiosis in there. Okay? And it's not for everyone. If you're thinking this might be an easier path than the academic route in the R1 institution, then no, this is not it. If you are really passionate and interested and dedicated about teaching and student learning, then maybe you should give it a shot. You can't fake it. The interviews comes out right away if you're pretending to be interested in teaching it, and it's not true. These are just some pictures of my students. If we took a group to the Shade Aquarium in Chicago a few years back, these are my histology students working in the lab. You can see 5 of them, there's 7 in the whole lab. So it's easy to be around and help them out. There's another group we're taking, because it was a lab, we're taking a quiz with coffee and treats in the hallway that day, because we couldn't bring our treats into the lab. And this is one of those general biology 2 poster presentations. So instead of just doing it in the classroom, we take it outside in the hallway and we make it a big deal so others get to see their work and they get to talk about their project and kind of pretend a little bit. And then I talk about developing long-term relationships with students. You get to go to weddings, you get to go to baby showers. These are my academic grandkids, some of them. These 2 met in my general biology class. When they graduated, they got married, and now they have I didn't put a picture of their child, but that's her pregnant. These 2, Ella and Spencer, we went on a spring break to the marine research lab in Mississippi, in the Gulf Coast Research Lab. That's what it, for a week, and they came just as they were in the same class, and they came back, and they've been together since. They got married a couple summers ago. And these 2, they were both in my class, but never talked to each other at all. And then we went in May to Costa Rica on a study abroad trip with a Spanish professor, one of those collaborations. And, adds a little bit more time and they got married. So I guess I'm a matchmaker as well there. Here's Stacy with Zoe and Tariq and his baby. He brings him over every so often. He just drops in. That's nothing. And I drop everything. When Tariq and his baby coming over, I don't care if I have a pile of things to grade. I need to talk with him and see how his life is doing, and so on. And that's, we sat out there. When was that, Gustavo? That was last summer or the summer before? I went to their wedding. I can't remember. The summer before, yeah. So this is the type of connection with the students that we build. It's not just me, everybody. We all have our collection of extended family pictures that go from there. Okay. I think that's my last one. Yeah. I'll answer questions.
already know that this is the route that you're interested in, do you recommend, like, are postdocs a necessary or a recommended thing? And if so, what type of postdoc should you be looking at?
It's not required. It may be helpful to make you a little bit more competitive in the field if there are several applying to the position. However, if you know you're interested in this, I would look for an opportunity to do research on education in that discipline. And there's plenty of it. There are schools, larger schools, that are hiring tenure track faculty on science teaching these days. And so I will try to, develop your teaching skills and your interest and your passion through that route, rather than spending 3 or 4 years in a research topic that might be really narrow. So you want to be competitive in your discipline when you apply to the job, but maybe strengthening the teaching part would be a better use of your time in that case. Yeah, what else? Yeah.
So you said you don't have to write grants, so do you have sufficient funding? Do you ever?
If I wanted to do research for real.
But I mean, for all the teaching things you do, I mean, are there
For-
things you wish you could do, but there's
Mhm.
not enough like teaching assistants or, instruments in the lab and things like
Mhm.
that? How are those funded?
Oh, that's a good point. So the courses I teach, the department budget for what I need on the lab, it's enough. I can buy the rats to dissect or the new slides for the histology class and whatnot. But the other more techie courses like molecular biology or cell bio, and those that they need more equipment, or we just blew out a -80 and we had to replace that. For those larger equipment, we team up with another department. For us, it's chemistry. They have the biochemistry program. And yes, we do, or they do apply to grants for equipment specifically. So it's not $1 million grant to conduct research for several years, but it's smaller things that help us that. And we tap on local industries. Like Kemen has helped us buy equipment in Des Moines and donated an NMR they didn't need anymore. So you become resourceful. Yeah, right.
Along those lines, we have something here at Iowa State called differential tuition that charges more tuition for curricula that have more cost associated with it. Have you all ever discussed that there, or is it all one flat?
It's one flat thing.
Well, don't repeat what I
It
said.
hasn't come up.
Yeah.
It was considered at one point charging a lab fee,
Yeah, it's kind of.
but I know the president at Grad for some reason opposes strongly to that, so we don't. Now currently we're going through a process trying to find efficiencies and things that can be cut that will not compromise the thing. And some people are, shaking in their shoes and wondering if their position will stay or not. For now, it's just a study to see where those are. And I can imagine some things changing a little bit in the number of students and the ratio student and faculty and the efficiency that we have in using our budget. I'm not concerned. You're right. Yeah. You have.
I wondered what was the most difficult challenge you've ever had in teaching and how you responded.
It's not an interview. Most difficult. Well, I can tell you my biggest frustration is when I think I've done everything right to teach the concept. We've had several weeks on this, and I write the test, and I think it's the most perfect test. And then I look at it again and say, well, maybe it's too difficult, so I tone it down a little bit. And then I look at it one more time, and then I add one very easy question because a little treat in there. And then I give them the test, and the average is 65%. And I'm like, and then you start first, I start beating myself and wondering what did I do wrong. And then I learned a few years back to do an exam graph, and after the test, ask them to reflect on the test, how they prepare for it, how they study, how difficult was the test, and what would they do different. And the answer is, I didn't study. So then I start beating myself up and let go. But that is the frustration part, because it's a there are two parts in this partnership, and you can be doing your greatest. Not that I do all the time, but I try. And the other part has to do a part. And they're students, they're undergrad students, they don't always do. And so I know that's one difficult. So then for the next test, I try to change the strategy and try to keep them more on their toes with more frequent quizzes or something. I try to do something to help them get ready for the next test. And by the last one, they're good. They're doing great. Yeah. Yes.
So since you don't get to do a lot in the summer, do you get paid no matter what?
The contract is 8 months.
8 months, okay.
Yep. So it's from August to the end of April. So you can split it so it's broken down into 12, but it's 8 months salary. So you're free to take another job during the summer or do nothing. Some summers I taught planimetology here when there had been enough students for that. Or I pick up an online course or something like that. And other summers I just want it off. I just don't want to work anymore. You need to recharge.
Thank you.